friends, and welcome back to the New Blocks. We've got a 0x for you today, back together 2 days after my birthday. It's October 18th, 2022. Kevin, welcome back to the New Blocks. Always good to sit down with you, bud. How you feeling? We're in post-merge territory. That was our last big topic. So how is it? Are your technical senses still tingling?
My technical senses are always tingling. Happy birthday, bud. I mentioned it on Twitter, but yeah, did you do anything fun for your birthday?
No, the opposite, but that's what made it such a good birthday. I just kind of sat back. I chilled a little bit. I'm now at the age where, it feels good to take it easy. Did a little sports betting, watched a little television. We ate at one of the shittier restaurants in town. I feel like my birthday is all about torture. If I get to choose, it's like,
Classic.
what's your least favorite restaurant? Well, that's where we're going, buddy. Then we came back and watched an episode of True Blood because, nobody really likes True Blood. It's really not a great show to rewatch. In the sea of infinite, amazing possibilities of television to put on. Well, Kevin, I went with
good shows on right now.
Season 3, episode 1, just right in the middle. Let's just dive right into a little True Blood. Let's remember the worst.
Throw the dart and pick that episode. Nice.
So it was fun. Cool. I bought a Murakami pillow for myself for my birthday, so that's real nice. One of my friends gave me a CyberKong VX. It's pretty cute. I also bought myself a CyberKong VX for some reason because, it's nice to buy stuff that looks like an ape.
Yeah, I mean,
great birthday.
Don't actually drop the money necessary to buy a Bored Ape, but you could pamper yourself with some lesser animals, maybe some flowers and such.
I've tweeted it, but one of my biggest NFT regrets was not buying any kind of CyberKong at the beginning, especially the Genesis CyberKong, because there's only 1,000 of those. They were one of the early PFPs that emitted a token where you got the bananas passively for just having it, and then at least the buy pressure, the burn pressure on the banana token was making the baby Kongs and naming your Kong and doing all that kind of stuff. And, now the curve's kind of been hit. But I think contextually, the CyberKongs did a lot of that stuff pretty early. And they've got some cool technical minds behind it now with, I think it's Play and Collect. There's some cool stuff that you can do with the NFTs there. And they moved over to Polygon, and it's a very interesting project. So at long term of all the kind of like blue chip NFTs, I like my Clone X a lot, but I think a Genesis Kong, I'm not a big pixel art guy, but now that I'm starting to embrace pixel art a little more, that's one regret, man. And so the VX is a nice step in that direction. At least it looks cool in the sandbox, or so I'm told. I still haven't really dove into the sandbox myself. But apparently my CyberKong looks badass in there. Apparently the Kongs have a custom animation. Like most things in Sandbox use the default humanoid animation, but the Kongs community actually made like a Kong type one. So that's kind of cool. They're a little more distinctive. Yeah, apparently it's very time consuming. So it's only the kind of thing that either a big investor or a crazy community with time on their hands would create. So
yeah, I try to avoid the regrets. I think no regrets is a good way to live in the crypto town.
No. I know you're being talk, dude. You gotta analyze the past. That's how you take notes for the future. That's why we have history class, dog.
That is definitely true in some contexts, but in the case of which JPEG NFTs I bought, I'm not too critical. I'll say I'm willing to analyze, but I'm not too adamant about criticizing.
Okay, can I add one little caveat to that anecdote?
Sure.
So the first, this is a pseudo crypto scam that I got caught up in. Okay, I didn't get scammed in the sense of like somebody rugged my money, but I got scammed in the sense that I was on the Binance Smart Chain for the first time, and I saw this exchange called Pancake Swap, and I saw some banana tokens on there, and I actually thought that they were pegged tokens to the CyberKong banana token, and they were not. These were BNANA, so they were missing an A in there. It's like banana tokens. So similar, but no, different banana. Yeah. So, I staked them, and I lost like 30 or 40% before I sold the bananas and realized, wait, oh no, this is the wrong chain. So I was pretty noob. I learned that lesson the hard way. I ended up not really losing that much because the rewards were so crazy and inflationary. It's like BSC DeFi. What are you going to do? But Yeah, that was so moments like that are worth reflecting on and going, okay, let's be a little more careful here. Not all bananas are created equal, Kevin. It's a good takeaway. First lesson in today's episode.
Yeah, I think over the course of the last year or so, the lessons keep piling up. I think a lot of what we'll be chatting about today, I anticipate, will be the the progress that the space has made. Since our last episode. We talked about the merge, so I was hoping we could talk a little bit about like what's happened since the merge, but then also I think a lot of the crazy shit that was happening during the bull market. It is usually the point of the bear market to kind of like wash out all the garbage and for a lot of the absurdity to kind of come to come to an end in some way. So I'm excited to chat about some of this stuff.
Yeah, it is a wild time, and the merge. I think I don't want to say it was overhyped, but it happened so smoothly, right? The execution really couldn't have gone better. All of these crazy extraneous scenarios that we had talked about, and there were so many different ones out there in terms of doomsday or how it's going to fail or what could go wrong, and it was really a thing well executed and a testament to a lot of crowdsourced work rather, and the collaboration of a lot of humans over a pretty long period. And in some ways, it's almost like repairing a train while it's moving, and that has some unique challenges when you need to get on top of it or work on the sides. So anyway, maybe a crude
Yeah.
analogy, but
It was excitingly boring. Is what I would say.
that's a good way to put it.
Nothing really happened.
Yeah, and I guess to be totally honest, because it was a question many people had, there hasn't been a lot of price action post merge. I guess in some ways it's actually been the opposite, where we did see a slight sell off after the merge of people kind of, okay, the hype's over. So and there was a little bit of a pump running up to it, just a little bit, but we saw some movement versus Bitcoin and the other coins. And since merge, it's been steady. Don't get me wrong; it's not like Ethereum has tanked or anything, but it hasn't really broke out. And of course, many of the deflationary mechanics and better structure now and smaller issuance, that doesn't really change things in the immediate short term. That's like on a multi-year time horizon, you start to see the real effect of that 80% or 85% decreased issuance. But for now, it's like we've just got a better base to build on. So builders happy.
Yeah.
For retail, not much has changed on the front end.
Yeah, I think the common criticism that I heard from people on Twitter was like, "Oh, all these Ethereum bros were talking about how great the merge was going to be for the price." But I think it's all about the sort of the lens and the time frame, and really like what your interest is in the space. Like if you're a trader and you were anticipating that this was going to pump your bags, that didn't happen in any sort of a short-term sense. I think the thing that I've always tried to communicate with the tokenomics change, the change in the tokenomics of the merge, is that this is more of like a kind of like longer term change in the supply and demand, and that sort of a change doesn't happen immediately. This is not like suddenly a ton of ETH was just burned and like we lost a bunch of supply. It was more so like we just shut off a leaky valve, and so like the effects of that valve being shut off don't happen immediately. But I also think like just the general macroeconomic climate and the whole kind of like macro bear that we're in is just like so much larger than crypto, and crypto is such a tiny part of the financial system that even if there is this sort of like shift in the tokenomics of something like Ethereum, if Ethereum is generally riding the same macro that all other financial assets are in, like it's going to probably do the same sort of thing in the short term. So
yeah. Absolutely. And it seems like there really is no shortage of commentary out there about more pain being felt in terms of macroeconomics with, Russia still has a lot of issues going on. A lot of currencies are very inflationary. It's funny to think a year ago, I was thinking to myself, guys, hedge away from the dollar. It's going to be a disaster. It's getting so inflationary. All these arrows are pointing really bad. And that is all true. But it doesn't factor in the fact that most currency is relative to all of the other currency in the world. So if the dollar is inflationary, the real question is, what's the baseline? As they say in economics, relative to what? And if the question is the rest of the world, well, it turns out most other currencies are a bit more inflationary, actually. It's even worse. Like in the UK right now, the British pound is not in a good spot. I was just over in London for that NFL game, and I was talking to some people about it. And the dollar goes further in the UK than it ever has before, in at least recent memory. And same with the euro. The dollar's been holding up pretty well. So funny how that kind of works out, Kevin. Actually, I think USD or USDC is one of the safer assets right now that some of my more bearish friends are starting to stockpile a little bit, which is funny because here I am, the laggard, like I'm over here just stockpiling ETH. Why isn't it going up? That's
No, I mean, I feel similarly. I was kind of anticipating this at the very beginning of like inflation numbers increasing. I guess the common logic, the common knowledge logic would tell you that this is bad and that you should try to figure out what other assets. But if all the other assets are also tanking much faster, then it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It's all going downhill.
Yeah, it's like, you were right. America's bad, but everything else is bad right now too. That's what global recession looks like. That's what macroeconomics are, and it does create a different place in the narrative where. I work on the gaming side, so we're used to the sort of FUD articles and these weird smear campaigns as one of the bigger players in the room when it comes to scholarships and just having more players around the world. But there was a wild article, I don't know, maybe a week or two ago, that was talking about Decentraland, I think was in the headline. And I think they said that they have 34 or like 38 daily active users. And when I saw that, I was like, all right, listen, I know Decentraland's not like bustling right now with people, but 38 is just not really possible. So
it's a sus number.
Yeah, when you dig deeper, it's how many transactions on chain they have per day. And like I think there was a number for Axie in there that was misreported and a bunch of other things where it's a strange phenomenon when you're reading it and you're like, right, as you just said, these are on-chain transactions. Those aren't daily active users for something that has like a game server where you can use the assets to just play the game. Like you're not claiming SLP every day when you're playing Axie. You get like sort of an SLP credit and then you claim all of them in one transaction when you want to. Like, and there's a lockup period and all that kind of stuff. That's part of the system, but I don't know, man.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I think it's like comparing. It's like comparing like CS:GO or Dota skins. Like every time someone purchases a skin, that counts as a user being active. It's like that. That's very little to do with the actual activity of the game. Or like every time a tournament pays out, that's like one action. Like that again, has nothing to do with gameplay. Yeah, I think I'm not surprised to see FUD during the bear market. I mean, typically it is kind of a year-round endeavor, but in particular, the outside world loves to kick crypto while it's down, like more than anything. So it's just not a surprising article.
Yeah, I think now that a lot of even crypto games have moved onto like private servers, let's say, for a lot of the gameplay, which makes perfect sense. Not everything has to be an on-chain transaction, but for something like the actual daily active users, it does require the developer to share that number. Like you can't really find it just by looking at only on-chain data. So I understand why that temptation is there. Like, hey, this is just one data point that we can look at and analyze. Should still call it what it is. But it will be interesting. In a bull market, you get a sense of what those numbers are because people want to brag about their numbers. In a bear market, when numbers are down, not many people want to share those numbers on a regular basis. So I I'm sure there will be many a more piece like this, and as you said, you do lose some in the bear market. That's kind of how it goes. We go through these cycles where you start to separate out who's really in it for the long term. When the downturn starts, a lot of people say we're in it for the long term, but yeah, saying is different from doing in this particular situation. Good old wag me, dude. Yeah, I don't see that phrase on Twitter nearly as much. Maybe that's because I have unfollowed a couple of key influencers.
No, I think it's just also like, no,
Wag me,
we're all
dude.
going to make it when we're all making it. And then when we're not, no one says that.
Wag me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of cringe out there. I don't know. I don't want to dwell on influencers, but I've definitely seen some goofy stuff, and I get it, dude. It is hard. I empathize with the people that have branded themselves as I am a Web3 gaming / esports influencer, because there's not a lot to make content about, especially if you're not playing Axie anymore. Like, what Web3 games are doing like regular tournaments or doing like a $2 million circuit, or, have these bustling arena seasons that are still pretty competitive. Even that, it gets hard to make content about regularly because it's a card game and we don't push updates during a season because we want it to stay pretty consistent. So it is hard to be like, if you have a podcast, that's part of the beauty of Axie Chat, and a testament of, they survived, years of getting like 1 or 2 updates from Sky Mavis, just sitting there theory crafting about what could be, man. Well, what do you think we could maybe do with these Axies one day, And that's another level of perseverance that really earns you respect. But sometimes you got to dig deep to make that work,
Yeah, yeah, and I think again, during a bear market when there's just a million new entrants into the market, and VCs are throwing money at every idea, there's just an overabundance of.
Don't you wish we had an investor for this
things.
podcast, bro? That would have been a great return.
Yeah, at some point I would like to do like a Gitcoin grant round for this. I feel like we could,
Yeah, hell yeah, let's go.
give us a little bit of change to throw around and increase the production value in whatever way. But yeah, I think, yeah, just again during the bear market, I think the lack of, like new exciting uh, projects that are getting thrown around every day. I definitely, I can empathize with that as well. Like there's just, whatever's happening is happening, and you got to kind of dig a little bit more. You got to turn over a few rocks.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of new rocks, though, hard pivot here. You had some news that we didn't mention at the top of the show.
Oh yeah.
You're working on something new there, eh, bud?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I switched jobs. So I was working at Consensus previously on the Truffle team, so building smart contract tools for other developers. Now I'm working at Metropolis, which is DAO tooling, sort of like on-chain permissions management. And essentially, if you think of a DAO, a lot of DAOs right now are very large, and like everything goes through token voting, very monolithic. I think the idea with Metropolis is to break apart these larger DAOs into smaller working groups, and making sure that those working groups have autonomy to make their own decisions, have their own finances, pass proposals, do whatever they need to do to to move forward on their metrics, while still kind of maintaining the transparency and all of the on-chain, um, all the kind of implications for being on chain, as a whole. So yeah, I'm really excited about
So
what
once
I'm working on
again,
now.
I feel like that episode of that '70s show where Kelso's at work with his dad, and his dad's trying to explain what he does, and Kelso's like, "I still don't get it. What do you actually do?" So that's cool. I'm glad you're excited. I kind of got part of it, but that was a
It's
very
gotten
Kevin
harder
way
to explain. The more crypto jobs, the deeper down the rabbit hole I'm going. When
So
I
you're
talk to friends and family, I'm like, think about organizations as a concept.
okay. So if I can help you try to summarize, you're helping DAOs build tools that make voting more efficient and get more participation?
It's that, and specifically, our focus is around like on-chain permission. So I'll go through a really quick example. Let's say you have a DAO where you have like 5 people that are in charge of making some sort of important decision. You can add these people to what we call a pod, and then within that pod, they have the ability to like vote on whatever they need. Um, and yeah, a lot of like right now I'm working on sort of visualization tools. So being able to kind of like visualize a DAO on chain in kind of a cool way. I think right now a lot of DAOs, even though everything exists on chain, it's really hard to visualize them and see how they work. So yeah, it's a little bit of that too. It's about like visualizing on chain organizations.
Okay, so you're building a project management tool. So you're building PowerPoint.
No, I'll just
Okay,
we'll try another elevator pitch another time.
got it.
I'll really hone in on this description.
Well, it sounds, yeah, let's think about how to explain it to some normal folks because I'd love to wrap my brain around it. It sounds cool, though. I love that
Yeah.
you're going deeper and deeper into the technical rabbit hole. And that is cool. You're like the guy building the infrastructure stuff that's actually really important that like other rails will rely on in the future. So you're building columns at Rome, my friend. Appreciate you.
Appreciate that. That's my
Thanks
hope.
thanks for digging deep. Wow.
Yeah, no, that's the hope.
Well, so
But
yeah.
go
I,
ahead.
I was
No,
gonna
go ahead.
say let's keep going on this like more technical side because I saw another headline that was talking about blocks now accepting censorship. We've crossed this 51 threshold, often a magic number in crypto. I think not so much in this specific system, but the majority of blocks now accept the protocol or whatever that blocks like Tornado Cash and the other sanctions and that kind of stuff. So for now, it's sort of like accepted, I guess, kind of because it's like one or two things, but this sets a precedent of, well, the blockchain is now going to be pretty much not censorship proof at all if it keeps trending this way. Is that the high level takeaway there?
I could provide a little more color. Yeah. So in the last few months, there's been some news. I think we had mentioned it a couple episodes ago, but Tornado Cash ended up on the United States Treasury sanctioned persons list, which means that if you interact with Tornado Cash on chain, you are considered to be violating sanctions. And so essentially, if you live within the US, it is illegal for you to interact with that smart contract. There's still probably going to be a lot of legal battle to determine if that is even within the jurisdiction of the Treasury or if that sort of action could take place legally. But in the meantime, what block producers have done is preemptively started censoring transactions where people are interacting with Tornado Cash. So when they are staking their ETH and it's their turn to build the next block, they get to choose which transactions they want to put inside that block, and so they are purposefully ignoring any transactions that are interacting with Tornado Cash. And so right now we just hit it looks like we're now over like 50% of new blocks don't contain those sorts of transactions. So people are referring to this as sort of like OFAC censorship, even though the government hasn't actually said that block producers can't include those in blocks. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's. I hadn't really thought about the voluntary part so much that it hasn't been decreed that they have to. It's just people kind of accepting it, I guess, under the assumption that, God, I just don't want to be hassled. So, I mean, I kind of get it. There's it's a bit of a virus, it starts to spread once they put something on that kind of a watch list or whatever it is. You're highly
the term
incentivized.
Is the chilling effect.
Yeah.
The chilling effect. Yeah.
Yeah. You're incentivized to not be guilty by association. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
wild times.
Yeah.
I struggle with this. I've in my 33 years, I just got one more tick on the old belt. I've thought a lot about censorship. In my youth, I actually wrote a paper on it when I was in middle school. The parental advisory sticker, if you remember that in the 90s that they put on CDs, that was like kind of a controversial thing. That was the censorship era. Old Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife. I don't know if you remember her. She was a big censorship proponent, really hated Eminem back in the day. You might remember some of those great slam tracks where he mentions Tipper Gore and her finer qualities. Um, every platform that it is not censored is just used for horrid shit. And every single one that's like, hey man, we're not going to have any censorship, but then we're going to have to censor the bad stuff, but it's not going to be political, just the agreed upon really bad stuff. And that sounds great until you start to apply that and you realize in the modern day that really bad stuff is also highly politicized. And there's this really weird, smeary Venn diagram set of things that overlap and that some people value and other people don't. And it very quickly becomes fucking Parler or 4chan or 8chan. And it's just not great. And it ends the same way. They're like, yeah, this isn't worth it. And then whoever is paying to create the monstrosity pulls the plug on it. And then some crazy person buys it and weaponizes it. So I've swung back to like kind of pro censorship in some ways because I think you gotta. It's that old. Was it Karl Popper? The old intolerance of tolerance thing. You know, if you're a really tolerant society, then the intolerant people take over. So to remain tolerant, you have to be intolerant towards intolerance. You know, whoa, bake your noodle there. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. But no, if you think about that long enough, you realize that, yeah, you should censor Nazis. You know, sorry, man. Free speech has some limits on it, you know? And,
I think this situation has led to a lot of really cool conversations in Ethereum Twitter around credible neutrality, because a lot of what Ethereum sets out to be is credibly neutral, meaning that it is not going to take sides. It is a platform where people can build transactions. And from that perspective, even as we pass that sort of 50% threshold, Ethereum is still, you are still able within 20 seconds to get a Tornado Cash transaction on there. It doesn't matter where you live. If you want to break sanctions in the US, you can do that. I'm not suggesting that you do. But from Ethereum's perspective, even when we hit, even you say 90% OFAC compliant blocks, that means what? Every 10 blocks you can get your transaction in. That's like 100 seconds of wait time. Look at something like Bitcoin, where it's every 10 minutes you get a block in there. I think even at 90% censorship, quote unquote, it's still like more quick and in some ways censorship resistant than something like Bitcoin would, because Bitcoin would have this same issue and I think actually this has happened in the past, where certain addresses are added to like a block list. But when your block time is 10 minutes, that's a sort of meaningful difference. I think I agree, though, with the nuance of what you were getting to around there is a reason for sort of like credible neutrality at a certain level, and then recognizing that there is just some shit that's inherently bad for everyone, and figuring out what that line is, and building a platform where it's sort of like, I think this goes back to code is law. I've never been a huge, like, strong proponent of that concept, because I think blockchains introduce a lot more immutability, but I don't think extreme immutability, even if the entire world disagrees with what's happening, is the answer. I don't think we need this sort of like potentially runaway tech that like we lose all control over. I think what we actually want is technology that can guide humanity more toward what they value, and not what a small group of shareholders or billionaires or one percenters value. And I think that is still the case. I think Ethereum also has a lot of like more technical work on the roadmap to essentially avoid what's occurring right now with censorship on the block builder side. There's this concept of a proposer builder separation that sort of allows for a a separation between like the person who is building the block from the person who's proposing it. And I think that will help in a lot of ways here.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to this topic, and it's like a genuinely fascinating
Yeah.
conversation.
No, it really is. Like you said, it ties into the is code is law conversation, and I think that's one that you can riff on for a while. So probably something that will keep coming up, and be a topic of the future. I think weirdly, when I analyze the landscape, I think Twitter is the best solution that we have at the moment, and I don't mean that to say like Twitter is perfect, but when you factor in the whole landscape, remember, dude, there's porn on Twitter and it's not really that walled. You can just like type porn into Twitter and just see it. You could, it's there. And they do a really good job balancing that freedom of expression and including it in the platform, but not letting it take over. And, how many people do you know that think of that first thing with Twitter? Oh my God, there's porn on there. Nobody. But remember the famous, was it Tumblr? Was that the one that was it
Yeah,
Yahoo
Tumblr.
bought Tumblr and then they banned the porn from Tumblr and then Tumblr tanked and now it's not worth anything? Twitter did the opposite and they found a way to make it work. And Tumblr's problem was that they felt like it was taking over the site. Like that's all the site was known for. So that's a marvel in and of itself. You can't do that on Facebook or Instagram or Google or any of these other kind of major platforms like that. And even though Twitter gets this really bad reputation for, banning right people and having a left skewed thing and all this kind of stuff and having an agenda, there's probably some truth to some of that. Every platform has some sort of a lens or an agenda because the real answer is moderation doesn't scale, and that's why this censorship conversation gets so interesting, because right now it's solved really with a combination of human intervention and some automation, and it's really hard to get context right. The YouTube fails miserably with context because there's just so much volume of content. It has to be automated, and false stuff gets tripped all the time. You just say one word and then is bad, and it doesn't get the concept of is bad afterwards. So anyway, I digress, but the freedom for censorship and censorship resistant tools, I think remains fascinating and has journalistic implications as well. But speaking of journalistic implications, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about Kwon a little bit, because that story has continued to erupt, and it's one of the worst things that's ever happened in crypto, specifically for South Korea, in terms of Luna and the big stable coin connected to that Terra ecosystem going bust. Billions of dollars worth of assets just evaporating. It was something that a lot of people kind of assumed would go bust at some point, but really underestimated the degree and the speed at which it happened. It turned out to be way more over leveraged than people realized, of course, as it always is with these things. And there were a lot of folks, again, specifically in Korea, that had really believed in it. They had taken out, mortgages and loans to go in on this thing. It was like a stable coin paying 20% yearly returns. So a lot of folks thought that was going to be their retirement right there. And fortunately, it went to zero. I rode that one all the way down to the ground, K-Man.
Yeah, and it wasn't just individuals either. Celsius, Three Arrows Capital. There was a few other big, even customer-facing crypto companies that went pretty much not all in, but went in enough that it caused them to become insolvent when that collapsed. And yeah, I mean, essentially right now, South Korea issued a red notice for Do Kwon, the co-founder of Terra. And the red notice means basically if you find this person in your country, send them back so that we can send them to trial. And so he's wanted in, I've kind of lost count how many
it's like
countries.
190 now or something. It's a shitload. It's like everywhere.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I get it. He built this sort of unsustainable Ponzi that blew up and lost a lot of people a lot of money. And I think when things like the 2008 financial crisis happened and the banks lost a lot of money for a lot of people, we were like, all right, who's going to jail? Where are we going with this? And of course, when nothing happened, a lot of people got upset by that. So on the one hand, I do
Yeah.
sort of see where like someone needs to be responsible, and the
Well,
person who built
he
it.
also is, you got to put his character into context a little bit. You know, there were a number of people that, right or wrong, pointed out some of the holes in this thing, you know, along the way. And we're like, this is a little scary. We've seen what's happened with these other algorithmic stable coins. They're not as stable as people think. You know, this one's gotten really big, and if it pops, it's going to be really bad. And he was a real douchebag about it a couple of times on Twitter in a very childish way that was unbecoming of whatever his title was, CEO or managing director, partner, or whatever the fuck. It's just like he was very snooty and know-it-all-ish. And even now, I saw an article where he's still, you know, posting a little bit, and his Twitter's kind of active, and he's sort of claiming that, you know, it was never about money and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, dude, if knowing where you were, it's one of two things. Either you knew that this thing was going to go boom before everyone else did, and there were definitely some flags there where you could have dialed this thing down instead of telling people to keep buying in. Or you were so clueless that you truly didn't know, in which case you're so disconnected from reality that I would classify that as, like, you know, gross negligence territory. You know, it's like either you're an idiot or you're a really failed, like, kind of, you know, mastermind guy that thought he was going to get away with this, but there's no way he's going to get away with it. So
No, I
anyway,
don't. I don't
maybe
think
maybe
so.
I'm being a little harsh there, but I think
No, I
that
don't think so.
that adds to the you know, the desire to want to stick it to him. You know, I've heard similar in America. You know, the IRS, they get this bad rap for being unreasonable, but they're actually really reasonable because they're pretty good at math. They want most people to just pay their taxes, man. They don't want people to go to jail. You don't make money and pay taxes when you're in jail. Instead, taxpayers pay to keep you alive in jail. The IRS is well aware of this. So they want you to keep doing your shit, and they want to set you up for success. But they're not going to be taking a fool. You know, you gotta be playing the game, and you got to be respectful, and you got to do the shit they want to, the way they want to do it. So, you know, people that have made mistakes on taxes have you know, climbed their way back before. It's like the Wesley Snipes of the world, where they say, you owe us some money, and you say, no, I don't. They go, oh shit, well, we're gonna make yeah, we're gonna show this guy what's up, you know, because they do want to make an example out of people that are trying to spit in your face. You know, it's one thing to bend the rules, it's another to take pride in being like, look, you know, I got away with it. And it's almost what he's doing right now by being on the run. It's making a spectacle of it. So it makes the authorities want to action it even more because you're you know, you're being disrespectful. And it's like in
Yeah, I
America,
mean,
you have the freedom to tell a cop to fuck off, but he also has the freedom to hassle you and give you a ticket for some really mundane shit if he wants to, you know?
yeah, I mean, in particular, Do Kwon, he made it his whole shtick to be kind of an asshole on Twitter. I was looking through some quotes. Some of them were like, "I
Yeah.
don't debate the poor on Twitter.
Oh, that's
You still
nice.
poor? Pretty sure he's poor. I don't gamble against the poor." Stuff like, um, he was very cocky about how his stablecoin was going to beat DAI. He said something like, "By my hand, DAI will die," uh, and was just
Wow.
very,
That's zingy, but really stupid.
yeah, really stupid. And yeah, I mean, his whole thing was like he was just made it part of his personality to be an asshole, and so I don't think of him as the sort of like lone developer that got caught between a rock and a hard place. Like, no, he kind of sucked, and I think he knew that he sucked while he was doing it, and anytime that anyone pointed out how unsustainable he was, he just like turned to calling them names, and it's like, all right, I don't feel bad for this guy. We should
Yeah.
probably get.
It's like, I call that the social Ponzi, kind of, you know, where you're like riding that wave and doubling down on aggression. It's an effective strategy, and it works when you don't have any cracks. But the moment it starts to crumble, like you got no friends. You know, there's nobody that's got your back, because even if you're neutral or slightly allied, you're radioactive, man. You know, talk about the chill. What is it? The chill effect, the chilling effect.
Yeah, the chilling effect.
There it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
the chilling effect is like when uh government will, yeah, like in the case of the Yeah, I guess in the context of this guy, it's like now he's suddenly radioactive, and anything he touches is like you want to avoid that. I
It's like
guess
with
I see what
fallout,
you're like right there.
like
Yeah.
dry ice makes the things around it cold. Wow, that's really deep, Kevin. Great
My God,
analogy.
this is so fucking deep.
Yeah, there it is. Well, speaking of deep, dude, the last little topic I wanted to highlight because you got to talk fashion when it's related to Web3. Big
Got
Kim
it.
K, Kim Kardashian had to pay a little settlement to the SEC. She shielded some crypto bullshit and did not do hashtag ad. And now this one is interesting because remember, there was a very specific event that kicked off this whole hashtag ad revolution. This is an American thing. This is like a policy we have in America. If you're getting paid in either money or gifts or something from a brand and you're promoting it, you have to disclose that you're being paid to promote it, because people were doing these like blog reviews where it was really just a paid ad, but it was written to look kind of organic. And this big proof of concept came when Kim Kardashian acted like that she was going to go to Fire Festival. And when people thought that that was an organic, like Kim's just going, and they didn't realize it was just a straight up paid advertisement, everybody wanted to buy tickets to go. And that was kind of the spark that lit the whole fire to have that whole thing take off and raise all the money and then get over leveraged and really turn into a Ponzi. So ironic, I would say, K-Man, that she's the one that started the whole damn thing, and now she is doing some other old token. I don't even know what token it was, but it was some like
Ethereum Max.
Oh, well, I don't really know what the use case for Ethereum Max is, but
I don't either. I think
sounds
it was just
fantastic.
someone smashed the fork button on GitHub and forked like one of the Ethereum code bases and then
Well,
made a
it's
Ponzi out of it.
It's
That's
super
basically it.
exciting. And you know what? They probably made more than she was fined. And obviously, to her, that's probably about what she got paid to do it anyway. So, well, it's hard for the laws to keep up, I guess. But I don't know. That
Yeah.
one's always relevant, I think, because in the crypto space, I know this is happening. If you're getting NFTs or tokens or anything that has any kind of value, then you're getting paid to endorse it, and you have to disclose that. And people don't, of course, and it's just it irks me a little bit. And for some of them, it's like, man, you're playing with fire, and you don't even realize it. You should be a little less cavalier, because these are tweets that you're not deleting. They're out there. They're archived now. There's websites that back this up. It's
Yep.
going in the time machine.
I'm
So
reading some of the quotes. One of her Instagram posts was, "Are you into crypto? This is not financial advice, but sharing what my friends just told me about the Ethereum Max token." This is rough. But yeah,
yeah.
this is another case where I am kind of glad to see that was it the SEC? Yeah, the
Yes, I
SEC
think
is suing
so.
her. Like this is sort of what the SEC is here to do, not like pick apart random legitimate DeFi projects. Like I think it
Yeah.
makes sense to go after people that are paid
Well,
shills that are
yeah. I mean,
pumping scams.
I'll tell you, maybe like an okay closing thought is I just read that amazing piece by Amy Madison, amymadison.xyz. She wrote I think it's a book, but then there's a digital version of it. The second chapter is all about securities and securities law. And she makes a pretty strong case that was relevant to something that was just being investigated about some of the token drops related to these projects. And the way that they're framed look a lot like securities, and some of these governance tokens that don't really do much governing eventually start to look a little bit like securities, where there's a buffer there, right? It actually reminds me, if you've ever filed a startup in America, a lot of states have this 3/5 rule, where 3 of your first 5 years you have to be somehow profitable. Like when you file your tax return and you have your your business, how much did I make? How much did I spend? 3 of those 5 years you got to be net positive, because you got to prove that it's not just a hobby where you're writing off expenses. At some point, you got to prove that, all right, someone somewhere is paying me to do something, or else this isn't an actual fucking business. There's maybe a little bit of a parallel there. So I get it,
Okay,
man.
I didn't know about that, but I guess that makes sense.
Jersey had
Just
that for
to
sure. Not all states do, but I know Jersey did. I was always stressing about that in the old broadcasting world. One year I was positive $100, Kevin. Made the cutoff. It's good stuff.
there you go. You're legit.
Yeah.
Good. That what a way to go out. Is like you're starting a startup and you're trying your hardest, but you just didn't make that 3/5 cutoff, and then
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
you
if it's
get
a
hit
hard and
by the
fast thing. You might be able
yeah,
to argue it and get an extent, but it's an interesting
sure.
default rule. It's supposed to keep you hungry a little bit. So I feel like some of these tokens are like, okay, so I think they've ruled so far definitively that Bitcoin and Ethereum are not securities. And if you read the Kryptonians, the Lars Shin book, it talks about actually the way they structured it and the way gas was actually like a fuel for the thing, literally like gas, and that's why it wasn't a security. That argument was actually somewhat sound, and those networks are sufficiently decentralized that that they don't trip the Howey test. So some of these other tokens, it's like, all right, what's the buffer? How many years after being issued as a governance token do you have to produce some sort of meaningful governance? That's an interesting bar that I think has yet to be set, but it's a question people are going to start to ask. So anyway, a lot of interesting stuff coming up. There's all this philosophical shit that people have been dreaming about is going to start coming to an interpretive head. And don't even get me started about CSW, dude. Our buddy Craig Wright's over there winning court cases. I don't know what the fuck's happening with that shit. We're going to have to report on that
Totally
in one of
forgot
these
about that guy.
episodes. I know. That's the thing. The whole real crypto world has tuned him out. And that's like part of the problem because he's now like found this great loophole where he's going into court cases and he's fighting legal battles. And then if he wins the cases, it's like, hey, I'm claiming to be Satoshi. Somebody challenge me. And obviously Satoshi's not showing up in court to challenge him. So then, like, some random court will be like, all right, yeah, sure, whatever. You're Nakashoto or whatever the fuck, So then you can use that to leverage your way up of like, hey, look, I proved I own this
Yeah,
thing.
I have 5 court cases that say
Yeah.
that I'm
So I'm
Satoshi.
paraphrasing, disclosure that's interpretive. I'm sure there's more to
Sure.
it than that. But yeah, he loves to sue people and fire the legal gun and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's scary how effective that strategy can be, and
Yeah.
I fear we won't be able to ignore it forever. Like wait until there's a headline in the New York Times that says like Satoshi identified, wins court case, proves his identity. It's like
Yeah.
that's going to be a shitty day that even if it's untrue is going to confuse a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that happens in this part of the market cycle is we just got over all of the lofty visions and the high expectations and hopes, and we are now back in the reality phase, and we are seeing the lines where crypto meets reality and figuring out kind of what the next phase of it looks like. And
Yeah.
I think this is definitely a reality check episode for the books.
For the books, yes, indeed. No, good time to wrap it up. And now, dude, I'm gonna be home for a while actually. So I'm going to Vegas for like 3 days. I'm going to this awards thing for esports on November 2nd.
Nice.
And yeah, it's a super quick trip. Be there for like 48 hours. I'm home, baby. Like this is it. I'm tuckered in
Nice.
and through the end of the year. So I'm ready to get back on more of a regular podcast schedule here. I hope you're settled too. We're gonna have some great American holidays. Gonna make some crypto content. I'm stoked, man. It's been an awesome year. I've done like so much traveling, and it's been really incredible. But I'm also excited to feel at home. Chill
Get a
with
little
the
bit of
boys.
rest.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
Follow me on the gram, and you'll check out some of my adventures, man. I got stories for days.
Oh shit! I gotta go check that out.
Yeah, hit me on the gram. All right. Well, always a pleasure, Kevin. Thanks a lot, buddy. You guys know where to find us. Of course, never financial advice in here, all educational. And I'm sure we'll have another educational episode or two coming before too long. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Peace.